Hey everybody, we're Workforce Gaming. I'm Doug, along with Brad,
Hello.
and we are going to be start talking about our Game of the Year, kind of. So how we do Game of the Years is because we can never really settle on a top five share between ourselves. What we do is we do sort of a three-part thing. Brad will go through his top five. That's what this video is about. I'm
Woo.
going to go through my top five, which is coming in the future. I gotta figure this. I gotta figure mine out. And then we do a joint one where we just give out random awards for things that we just like this year rather than anything specific. And then we do try to agree on a single game of the year, which usually ends up in sort of like a weird sort of compromise that we're kind of like, oh, okay.
Wasn't my favorite game, wasn't your favorite game, but why not?
Yeah, so let's pick something totally different.
Yep.
Yeah. Last year's I think our game of the year was PSVR, which was a cop out, but it was a good compromise.
No, it was yours. I think ours was Overcooked because I insisted that we picked a game.
Are you sure? Oh, actually, I need to go back and see that then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So anyway, to get into Brad's top five for 2017, apparently one of the best years in gaming ever, according to everybody.
I almost agree.
So Brad, what is your top five game?
Okay, before we do this,
Yeah.
two things I need to say before I get to my top five. First of all, yes, this is one of the best years ever. I had like 8 or 9 games, and it was really hard for me to get like my top five.
Yeah.
So really quick, Edith Finch did not make my top five.
What the fuck? Are you serious? What?
But that is a damn good game, and it's my number 6 game of the year. And I just needed to make sure that got mentioned. And also, I'm like 5 or 7 hours into Xenoblade 2, which I think there's a good chance might have been in here if I actually got a chance to finish it before we did this.
I don't believe it would, because with Xenoblade X, you said the exact same thing last year, and then you got through Xenoblade X. You're like, I was like, would that have gone? You're like, no.
Well, I'm just putting it here just in case.
Okay, I'm glad Edith Finch is 6 though. That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah, no, that game's incredible, but I think it's one of those, like, these other 5 games that I have are just much bigger, they do a lot more.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I think that was why it was hard for me not to put it in there. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I absolutely love that game, but just the other 5 games I have here are just, they're so big, they're so good, they do so many things that it's hard for me to be able to say, okay, Edith Finch is better than those, or I like it better. And I think that's a good thing to say as well. This is not necessarily like, this game's like the 9 out of 10 and the 9.5s out of 10. These are just our favorite games.
Yeah, like Zelda's the best game of the year. I don't like it that much, but
Okay, anyway. So number 5.
Number 5.
So this game is one of those games that if you were to ask me a year ago, it would not be here, and that's Danganronpa 3 Killing Harmony.
Oh, really?
So I had never touched Danganronpa before this year, and I played through all 4 of them this year.
That is insane.
So part of this might even be just like that whole series, but Danganronpa 3 does some incredibly amazing things with your perception of the series and your perception of what's going on in this game.
Yeah.
And it's weird for me just because this is one of those things I never in a million years would be like, oh, a visual novel. Like, that's a cool idea. Like, definitely not my normal type of game, as you'll see from the other 4 here. But just something about this game and the way the characters are presented. The characters in this game are fantastic. The way the ending goes, the last 5 to 10 hours of this game are just incredible, with as like super crazy as it goes, and it just throws everything you thought about Danganronpa out the window and just completely messes with it in just an amazing way. And it does some cool things, which is some of like the side parts and mini games where you're just doing weird little things, and the actual art of arguing in this game adds some new features in terms of lying and in terms of just the mini games that happen there where you're arguing and you're trying to present cases. They do it in such a cool way, in ways that are different than the other 3. And it's just, the series as a whole is something that I can't stress enough how amazing it is and how cool it is. And it's just one of those things where the story itself, I think, has been done before when you look at kind of that Hunger Games-esque story.
Yeah.
And the way this does it is just so much better.
Yeah, because it's I guess it'd be like technically the 3rd time they've done essentially the same setup, but I know there's a lot of twists and stuff in this one, but it's kind of interesting they've been able to take that same formula, or that same like story formula, and then keep changing up for 4 games.
And that's the thing. And if you've played the demo for this, the demo really does some cool things with like bringing in old characters to introduce you to new characters, just because the demo is completely removed from it. But with this one, after even like the first chapter, it changes things completely from what you originally had thought going in. There is kind of a lull in the middle that I'll admit to, where you kind of get into the Danganronpa feeling of, okay, somebody got murdered, let's investigate, do the trial. It does sink a little bit into that, because you're going, okay, especially having played all of these within the span of like 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're kind of going, okay, like, I get it. I know what's coming. I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But again, just the beginning, the first 3 chapters, I think it's 2, maybe it might be 2. The first couple chapters and the last couple chapters are just such incredible bookends to what you think Danganronpa is going to be when you put this game in, that it's mind-blowing at the end when you're just like, what just happened? And I think it almost gets here, because this is one of those games that still every now and then I just go back and think about, like, I played the game like 4 months ago and I'm still like, man, I can't believe da-da-da-da-da.
You know what's really funny is, like, I kept hearing that game, like, in sort of the rounds of like anime games I just know I'd never be interested in, but I keep hearing that one brought up, kind of like with Persona. It's like these games that are sort of like elevated outside of that like subgenre of just like anime type games. So like the fact that you really like it, I know you don't like, I know you don't watch a lot of anime or any.
Occasionally here and there.
Yeah,
it's something super interesting like Attack on Titan or whatever. But and that was kind of my thought too. Is like, oh, maybe I do like this kind of stuff. So I went and played was it Steins Gate or whatever after this. I've heard that's another great game, kind of in the similar mindset. And I couldn't make it more than 3 or 4 hours before I got bored. So I think this is kind of that Persona thing where it's like, okay, this is a type of game that you may not be interested in, but this series is so good that it does take it to another level where it could have that broad appeal like Persona 5 got this year. Yeah. Even though that is a very, very specific title for specific people.
Yeah. Specific people. That's funny.
Well, like,
I got
what I mean? There's a target market for Persona that's not
general wide audience,
all gamers.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels like it's not necessarily for a broader audience, but it's just so good that it elevates it beyond being niche.
Absolutely.
All right, so then what's your top 4 then? So what's your number 4 on your top 5 list?
So my number 4, and this is actually a game I just finished a couple weeks ago, is Resident Evil 7.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This is a game I waited on like all year long.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of missed it initially. I think I was playing a couple other games and was just busy at the time, and then it just kind of kept getting pushed back and back and back. I finally got around to it, and this game is incredible. I don't think I've ever seen survival horror, which admittedly I'm not a huge fan of. I've never seen survival horror done this well.
Mm-hmm.
The way the game works through kind of this haunted house feel and then getting gradually bigger, it builds on itself really well. There's just constantly moments of me actually being like hesitant to do things, which I very infrequently get that in games, even, like an Outlast or games like that. I very, very rarely get that feeling like, I don't want to go around the corner.
I wish I had.
I don't want to go around the corner.
Or didn't have that feeling.
Very rarely does that happen, and there were a good dozen or 2 dozen moments in this game where I'm just like, oh, I don't want to. Okay, fine, here we go. Oh, nothing's there. Okay, cool. But the way the game presents what you're trying to do, and the way the game kind of builds these characters, and the way the game presents the protagonist, and just trying to get out and try to figure out, not only getting out, but then figuring out what's going on, and you're trying to find your wife the whole time and figure out what's going on, and there's the broader mystery and there's the smaller mystery, and just everything builds on it. And then you cannot say enough about how much VR changes the game until you play Resident Evil 7.
Okay. Yeah.
I played probably about half of it over like the 1.5 times I played it. I played probably about half of it in VR total.
Yeah.
And there are just scenes that are incredible. I think I talked about it in our review, where there's scenes where I literally like wanted to turn away from the VR, but it's on your face and you can't turn away from it.
Yeah.
Just with characters getting right in your face and characters attacking you very violently.
Yeah.
And the feeling it gives you is just this feeling of dread, and it's a feeling I've never had before playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible. And tying in with some of the other Resident Evil stuff, it does a little bit. I think most of that's been spoiled, but I don't necessarily want to bring it up just because I don't want to spoil any more than has been spoiled. But just tying in with some of those things, and just everything works really, really well. It's one of those games where I can look at it and just go, you know what? This is a great example of what a survival horror game should be.
So I mean, I guess in the scope of games, like I understand it's like a good survival horror game, but is it just a good game in general? Like, or is it are they so intertwined together? It's kind of hard to.
Well, they're intertwined together, obviously, but I think it is just a good game in general. Now, I mean, obviously, looking at a game like Danganronpa,
yeah,
there are people who would go, "That's not a good game. You don't do anything."
Yeah,
and then you could go with, okay, Resident Evil 7 does get more into that Outlast type feeling of just kind of walking through a place, looking around somewhere.
Yeah.
Versus your Resident Evil 5s and 6s where it's you've got a rocket launcher 3 minutes into the game and are just blowing shit up.
Yeah.
But it's a great game in the sense of everything you're doing is entertaining. There's never a dull moment, and you change environments enough. It doesn't get into, they did a good job of presenting it where it just looks like you're in the house, but as you're going through, you're always going to new environments. There's always new weird little things that are there, whether you're in the house, when you get outside the house, everywhere you go in the game. And ultimately builds to this really cool mystery going back to some of the other Resident Evil things that have come up over the years, again, without getting too much into spoilers.
Yes, it's I feel like that game, like, it's Resident Evil, so how is it like Resident Evil? And that's what's like, it's hard to do that without spoiling like what makes it like Resident Evil games.
Yeah, because again, if you say Resident Evil, there's 4 or 5 things that come to mind, and it's like, okay, yep, some of that's there.
I like this year that I feel like we haven't finished your list, but I do like that a lot of franchises have like really mixed it up this year. I think like Resident Evil is in the same way, like Zelda Breath of the Wild, same way that Super Mario Odyssey. I feel like this year it's like been a lot of shakeups, and I really like shakeups of stuff.
For sure, and I think with Resident Evil, it's a needed tone change for the series. I think you were getting stale with what you were doing. I think a lot of people hated it. I never got the overly hatred-fueled opinion of Resident Evil 5 or 6 that I think a lot of people did. They're fine games. They're not great, but they're entertaining like popcorn movies. But it's a good tone shift, and I'm excited to see where they go. The DLC, I think, slowly is giving you hints to more of what they're looking at doing for future projects with this. And it left Resident Evil in a great place, and I'm loved playing this. It's a game that if somebody's never tried VR, I purposely saved a couple points in the game so I can go like, oh yeah, go to this scene, like this will show you what VR is like, because there are some scenes in there that just make you like want to just rip the thing off your head, smash it on the ground.
I hate that aspect of VR. Don't show it to somebody.
Oh, it's so good, just that feeling of like, oh my god, what's happening? Like Kitchen, like the intensity of Kitchen, but you're able to do more control, and it's just, oh, it's so good.
Still haven't played Kitchen. Never gonna do it.
Yeah, I know.
Never gonna do it. All right. So I guess moving on to number 3. We're getting close. Okay, real quick, before we get into the top 3, there's like 3 in my head that are just
they're all here.
Is it? Yeah. So I guess right now it's less of like what are the top 3 and what order they're in. I guess I'm more curious.
Yeah. So before I even say anything, I'm going to tell you this. These 3 games, any point over the last 2.5 months, have changed order.
Oh, really?
Because most people, I think, if you've listened to us before, will be able to figure out that it's Zelda, Horizon, and Mario.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in that order. But at this point, like, these 3 games have switched a dozen times. Yeah. I could go back to November when I finished Mario and go, oh my god, Mario is the best game I've ever played.
Yeah.
I had that feeling after Zelda. Horizon, I think, has that negative effect of being in February.
Yeah.
And then having that being so long, but I just played the Frozen Wilds and I put that in and I was like, oh my god, this is good. Like, I forgot how good this is.
Yeah.
And then going back and just kind of collecting stars here and there in Mario, it's like, oh, there's so much to do. And so at any point, these have been in like 3 different orders. So this is just kind of the order I happen to settle on this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be. I think it's interesting. I think like 3 or 4 years from now, like look back. Like I'm really curious when people look back on 2017, like which of these games like really caught on and which one, it's still a best game of all time because not a lot of games like followed it up. So okay, what's number 3?
So my number 3 is Zelda.
Whoa! Wow. Okay, let's get into it.
So my thing with Zelda is and to clarify, like these are all fantastic games. Yeah. I think if I were to make a list of my favorite games of all time, all 3 of these would probably end up in the top 25 of all time. And Zelda in particular, just kind of comparing it with them, with the others is I guess kind of almost what I want to do with this is Zelda is amazing and it's fun. but there are just some times in Zelda where it's just like, I wish there was a bit more. I love lore and stories and things like that. And Zelda is, you know, the traditional rescue the princess. And yes, there's the divine beast and there's these champions that you kind of find bits and pieces out about. But what really kind of sets Horizon apart in my mind and makes me like Horizon a bit more, to put it in my 1 or 2 spot, is that story in Horizon, the way Horizon really just draws you into that story and you just discover things. That's a feeling that I love. And I don't feel like I got that in Zelda. I got an amazing game. I got great gameplay. I got one of the coolest world maps just to explore I've seen in a long, long time, if ever. But I always wanted to know more about this world. And I think that's more of a construct of Zelda in itself.
Yeah.
And that most games in Zelda just kind of give you the bare bones. Princess, Ganon, couple new twists this time.
Yeah.
Go have fun. And that's great and that's awesome, but I always want more, and I think that's where I kind of just settled back a little bit more on Zelda.
Yeah, I think too, it's just like the Zelda games in general, like from the ones because I liked Wind Waker a lot. And I think the thing with Zelda games is like when they have those 3 main characters, like, you know, like you're saying, it's like Ganon's the bad guy, Zelda's the princess, you know, and Link is the hero sort of thing. You always have like this really great cast of side characters that you can like rely on for the interesting aspects of Zelda games. And this one, like, just from what I've played, like I think I got through 3 Divine Beasts so far, is like it just didn't have that, I think. But
well, they're interesting, but you don't interact with them as much as I feel like I would want to. And I feel like each one has those separate kingdoms and they have these separate ideas and they have these separate thoughts about the world. And I wanted more explanation of it.
Yeah.
And again, this is the 3rd best game of the year and it's one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
But just in comparison with the other 2, that's kind of where I'm just stepping back a little bit and going, okay, that pushes Horizon and Mario a bit ahead of it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess to lend it on a more positive note, so it's like, I like all the crazy shit you can do that game.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, is like you can literally, after 20 minutes, do anything you want in this game, which normally I'm not a fan of, but it works so well in this game and it's so much fun. It's so much fun just to wander around and see what you can see and climb a mountain and look out at the top of the mountain and just look around you. And it's just such a cool feeling to play this game.
Yeah, I do like it. I felt more than like any other game where you see a point in the distance and you're like, I can probably get to that point. Like in most, even in Horizon, like there's definitely, it feels like there's a wall around the world. And in Zelda, sure. it didn't feel, there is a wall around the world, but you definitely don't feel it as much, I think, compared to like any other game I've played before.
Well, and I think that's part of the thing with it being an island is it has a natural boundary, whereas Horizon, I feel like it's just those big old mountains on the side.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So just that natural boundary of a beach and an ocean and going, you know what, like there's probably more out there, and you know, if I had a boat and Nintendo was going to make more DLC, I'll bet I could get to it. But yeah, just, and even like you're saying, like being on the Mountain and seeing that point going, I can get there, but also going, I can get there, and there's probably stuff to do either A, along the way, or B, when I get to that point.
Yeah.
There's very few parts in this that feel sparse and just like they're there to say, oh, look how big our open world is. Everything has, you know, there's a stable or there's a shrine or there's something there for you to do.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a cool game. Yeah, so is that the final thoughts on Zelda before we move to 2 and 1?
Yeah, I think let's go to 2. All right, so then obviously you can figure out the other ones, but Horizon would be my number 2.
Okay, all right.
And then Mario would be my number 1. And just to talk about Horizon for a second, I think again that game really, in my mind, has some of the coolest combat I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They weren't afraid to try new things, and it worked out.
Yeah.
Which I don't think you see in those action RPG type games. A lot of it's just okay, here's a variation on a sword, here's a variation on a bow and arrow. Whereas this is, you got traps, you've got all these different things that you can do. You can approach any different monster you want in there.
Yeah.
And you can kill it, you can trap it, you can do whatever you want to it, and each way is going to work. Some may be more effective than others, some may be really ineffective and take you a really long time, but you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's just such a cool thing. And the story in that game just blows my mind. I kind of talked about it with Danganronpa, where I go back to that story and I go back to, like, you know, Danganronpa and the way they handled that ending.
Yeah.
Horizon's different in that I go around, just even looking around the world, sometimes I go like, oh man, like thinking about, again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but you know what I mean? Just like thinking about how the stuff around us in the world almost fits into that world of Horizon now.
Oh yeah.
And just seeing kind of that natural progression of like, this is where things get to and this is how things happen. And Just the way that story unfolds and the way that Aloy is a part of it and is discovering things, and just they piece out those discoveries in the perfect size amounts, like every half hour, an hour.
Yeah.
That you're never sitting there going like, man, what happened 2 hours ago that I was interested in? It's like, oh yeah, there was that thing and that thing and that thing and that thing, and oh yeah, what was that?
Yeah.
And just in terms of open world, I don't hate open world games, but never are my favorite games are never open world games.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I get so overwhelmed with so much shit to do that I just brush it off and go, nope, I'm not going to do any of that because there's too much.
Yeah.
This has that great balance of there's enough stuff to do.
Yeah.
But it's never overwhelming. Yeah, and the stuff to do always feels like it fits a purpose. I don't remember a single side quest in this being a go get my watermelon from the tree that's on the other side of the world. Just walk there. I mean, you're shaking your head. There were for sure a couple, but
yeah, I was gonna say, I think I've done that. Okay.
But, and again, I didn't do all the side quests because I just normally don't do that. But the ones that I did do were the interesting ones, and there's a lot of like, oh, go find my brother who did this, and like I think he got involved with this thing, and like and it just, I don't know, it just plays really well, and I love that game. And it was originally, this game probably held the number 3 spot for the longest time, but playing Frozen Wilds was just that, like, remember like how cool this is to be in this world and how cool this combat works.
Yeah, Sony was very smart to release that DLC when they did.
That's the only reason that DLC came out when it was for people like me who are like, man, I liked Horizon. Oh yeah, I really liked Horizon.
Yeah. I think the thing I really like about Horizon is that I feel like with open worlds, there's always caveats you have to do. You have to like sort of have, it's like, okay, an open world game, the combat's not going to be as good as most action games. The story's going to be a little weird because open worlds, they're not really going to know how to do the story. And then the graphics are not going to be as good. And like Horizon's like, nope, graphics are incredible. Combat's incredible. It's better like than a lot of linear games for sure. Yep. And the story is like, it totally works. And it's like legit one of the best like video game stories I've ever heard. So
agreed completely. And that's why it's number 2.
Yeah.
So Mario, Game of the Year. This is like one of those things that just for me personally, I probably could have told you this in January.
Yeah.
And I would not have.
I think you might have told me that in January.
I feel like I might have. I don't think we did like a preview of 2017, but had we, I definitely probably would have told you that Mario was going to be my Game of the Year with no questions asked, hands down. Which Horizon is all to give it a run for its money, but that game's just fun.
Yeah.
I mean, there is literally nothing you need to say other than that game is fun.
Yeah.
And Nintendo just everything that they could come up with in that game, they put in that game. Everything works. There's never a moment in Mario where I'm going like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when you get to kind of the grind of let's get all these ridiculous amount of stars at the end after you beat the game, that gets a little bit into like, oh my god, why am I doing this? But then stop.
Yeah.
You beat the game already, but just the way you're able to take control of every single thing, or not every single thing, but the majority of things in these worlds.
Yeah.
And each one does their own unique thing, and each one works.
Yeah.
And each one feels like these classic Mario characters that you've seen for dozens of or decades at this point.
Yeah.
They control the way I would think they would control. They do the things that I think they would do.
Yeah.
Had I thought 20 years ago when I was first playing Mario back on the Super Nintendo or the NES, oh, if I'm going to control a Goomba, it's going to kind of waddle a bit. It's going to kind of turn sharp. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I would have pictured. And that's just really cool that Nintendo can kind of embody all of that into this game. And just the again, it's hard to talk about some of these with spoilers because some of the things that I love about these games are spoilers. Just the way this game ends and that last world and that final battle and the festival. And it just has some of my favorite moments I think I've ever had in a game.
Yeah.
That festival scene still just plays in my mind. There are times where I'm still singing that damn song. That damn song will get stuck in my head, and I haven't heard that song in forever. And that song's just so catchy in that festival scene. And you get to be a T-Rex and smash stuff as Mario. Like the stuff in this game just blows my mind, and it's just so fun. It's so entertaining. It's one of those games too that you can pick up for 5 minutes, play for 5 minutes, have an awesome time, set down. It's the perfect evolution in my mind of 64 and Sunshine.
Yeah.
And looking at what those games tried to do and then just doing it to a level near perfection.
Yeah, and it feels like it looked at a lot of games and learned from a lot of games and took the things that worked and kind of took things that didn't. Because I think the thing I really liked about Mario Odyssey particularly is that they have a lot of neat sequences, which is not something that's like really part of Mario if you think about it. Like when you think of Mario games, like there's a cool boss battle or a cool level, but in this one they added not only just cool boss battles and cool levels, but just like neat sequences. Like scripted moments is not the right way to talk about it, but it's just like these very cool like
set pieces
almost. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of new for Mario, so it's cool seeing like these awesome set pieces.
Yeah But yeah, again, those three, I mean, I could, if you asked me tomorrow, there's a good chance those might shift order. But those three alone make this, I think, one of the best years, I think, for video games. And again, there's an Uncharted game came out this year, and that didn't even cross my mind to put in the top 5, and that game was awesome too. Like, the new Life is Strange is great. Their Injustice was awesome. Like, there's so many cool games that's like, that's not even good enough to consider my top 5 for this year.
Yeah. It's the year where all these games would have been Game of the Years in other years.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking, like, going back to, like, Game of the Years from last year, it's like, maybe one of those makes my top 10.
Oh, really?
I don't remember exactly what my top 5
actually, that would be
were,
interesting, like, I didn't look back on mine. I'd be curious, too.
Because I think mine were like, well, Doom's good, but I don't think it's better than any of these 5. Like, Uncharted 4 would probably be up in the top 3 or 4. Like, Ratchet and Clank wouldn't make it. Titanfall wouldn't make it. Gears wouldn't make it. Like,
yeah.
So many of these games are just head and shoulders above what we've seen before. That, yeah,
it's a good year.
Good year.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say. That's just like, this is a good year. I like your reasoning though between like your top 3 though, because I think that is a lot of the discussion too. It's just like which one of the best of these, but it's like they do all these things very differently and have their own like unique strengths and weaknesses that I think it's fun to like just talk about how these things kind of stack up as like your own personal favorites. Because I think that's what it comes down to at those top 3 is like what's your personal favorite for sure.
And I think a lot of times talking about them on individual basis, it's hard to sit here and go like, oh yeah, well this is kind of why it's not quite as good as this. But if you just narrow it down to those 3 and you kind of look at like, okay, what can I pick out that sets this apart?
Yeah.
It is much more interesting to look at like, okay, well this one I think I like better because of this. Because if anybody made an argument for Horizon being their favorite game, I would not have an issue at all.
Good.
I see Zelda. Yeah. That's why I said I think our discussion this year is going to be pretty easy. Because honestly, whatever, if you pick one of these 3, we're good. Yeah. I'll be happy. So
it's going to be Edith Finch, honestly.
I would honestly be okay with that too. But yeah, but again, it's just like any of those games, I think you could pick one thing and go, this is what sets it apart for me. And
yeah,
that's great. So it's just a matter of what is it that you're looking for. And this year, lucky enough, you had plenty of good options.
Yeah, it was a good year. All right, we are Workforce Gaming. If you guys like what you heard, you can always follow us at Workforce Gaming on Twitter or subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.